France has declared a state of emergency in New Caledonia Island. This comes after violent protests erupted in France against electoral reforms that have resulted in the death of one police officer and 3 others. Armed forces are protecting New Caledonia's 2 airports and port, with French police officers on their way to the Pacific territory. Authorities have arrested 200 protesters. The current violence is the worst the island has seen in decades. This is the latest information that we're getting as far as the French protests in Caledonia are concerned. We've been told that a state of emergency has been declared. My colleague Brian Thomas with us on the broadcast. Brian, if you can take our viewers through the details of how France is now dealing with this latest problem. Brian, can you hear me?
Yes, Devik, I can hear you.
Brian, if you can take our viewers through the details of this latest protest in France and how exactly is the government there now dealing with the matter?
Definitely, Devika. You know, France has definitely, in a very tragic thing also, France has declared a state of emergency in New Caledonia following these violent protests against the proposed electoral reforms that resulted in the deaths of 1 police officer and 3 civilians. Now, armed forces have also been, Devika, deployed to protect, the New Caledonia's 2 airports and port also, with hundreds of French police also en route to the Pacific territory after 3 nights of severe riots. Now, about 5,000 Devika rioters also, clashed with, gender arms also in 3 municipalities of the French collectivity, including between 3,000 and 4,000 in the capital. Which is the Nomia, and even Louis Le Franc also, which is the High Commissioner for New Caledonia, also reported the authorities had arrested 200 people rather by Thursday, with 64, gendarmes and even police officials being injured, and the protesters also rather set up road barricades, creating a critical situation for medicines and food supplies. Now, if we talk about the cause of the unrest, these violent protests also erupted over proposed electoral reforms, and critics argue that it could marginalize the indigenous Kanak population in favor of pro-French politicians, and these reforms have led to widespread unrest and even violence that resulted in even 4 fatalities. Now, the New Caledonia also is a French overseas territory with a long history of tension between the both indigenous Kanak population who seek independence and the descendants of European colonizers who wish to remain part of France. And the territory is located hundreds of miles off Australia's eastern coast, and the current violence, Devika, is the worst the region has experienced in decades, which underscores the deep-rooted issues also regarding Paris's role in the archipelago. Now, government spokesperson Prescott have not also has called for calm and resumption of political dialogue also, and the state of emergency was enacted at 8 p.m. That happened on Wednesday also, which corresponds to 5 a.m. in Nomia. And this declaration, Devika, provides local authorities also with enhanced powers to restore order, and under the French law also, the state of emergency allows authorities to restrict public access to certain areas, conduct searches, and prevent individuals that deem threat to public safety from entering the certain zones. And even French President Emmanuel Macron's office also had declared that all violence is intolerable and will be met with a relentless response to restore order. And Prime Minister Gabriel Attal also emphasized the severity of the violence and necessity of the state of emergency to re-establish control. Yes, Devika.
Okay, Brian, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Let me cut across to Ambassador Suresh Kumar Goyal, also with us right now. Ambassador Goyal, if you could take our viewers, sir, through this latest problem that France is facing at this point in time.
Devika, it's a bit complex, really. You see, New Caledonia was earlier part of the trusteeship areas, trusteeship territories, and the New Caledonia had then the right to decide whether they want to claim independence or they want to be part of France. Now, if I recall correctly, a few years ago, a few may not be really so few, maybe around a decade or something, or maybe a bit more, New Caledonia, there was a kind of a referendum. And in that referendum, New Caledonia decided to remain part of the France government. And therefore, and on that basis, because under the trusteeship council, all the territories governed as trusteeships had the right to decide on their future. For example, like in Africa, there were several territories which were part of the trusteeship, and India played a great role. In Pacific also, there were several territories. Island was a trusteeship territory. India played a great role in getting these trusteeship territories to become independent. It was part of the decolonization process also. New Caledonia decided to remain part of France. And legally speaking, once New Caledonia has decided to remain part of France, France can then decide on how the laws of France should operate in New Caledonia. Now, I agree that as a democracy, any new laws which are introduced in New Caledonia, people of New Caledonia, Kanak origin, mostly in nature, should have a say. Apparently, France did not consult the indigenous population of New Caledonia, and that will lead to a problem. So it is both a political issue, but Kanaks had decided already to remain with France, as well as a legal issue as to how France is going to have its writ in the territories which it will say is part of France. I would really simply say that, for example, there are several territories who at the time of independence had chosen to stay away from India.
Right, absolutely.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.